When the Detroit Tigers inserted a player fresh off his high school graduation into their starting lineup in 1953, many naturally wondered if the kid was seasoned enough to stick in the big leagues. Just 2 years later, they had their answer, when at age 20, Al Kaline became the youngest player to ever win a big league batting title. It was the beginning of a stellar 20-year career that took Kaline all the way to Cooperstown. Albert William Kaline was born December 19, 1934, in Baltimore, near the present-day site of Camden Yards. He was initially cut from his high school's varsity baseball team, but took advantage of a second chance when the starting outfielder suffered an injury. After 4 All-State seasons, Kaline signed as a bonus baby with Detroit and became one of very few players to bypass the minor leagues entirely. Kaline played more than 150 big league games as a teenager, batting .276 in his first full season in 1954 to finish 4th in the American League Rookie of the Year voting. Next came his magical 1955 campaign when he led baseball with 200 hits, a .340 average, and compiled an American League best 321 total bases. That season was just a taste of the brilliant consistency to come for the man dubbed Mr. Tiger by fans in the Motor City. He was named to the All-Star game in 15 of his 22 Major League seasons, captured 10 Gold Glove awards in right field, and finished in the top 10 in league MVP voting 9 different times. Kaline and the Tigers improved throughout the 1960s, and after a heartbreaking second-place finish in 1967, they both got their shot on the national stage the following season. Detroit raced to 103 victories to claim its first pennant in 23 years, then stormed back from a 3-1 deficit against St. Louis to claim the World Series title. Kaline's 2-run single in Game 5 to give Detroit the lead was one of the keys to the Tigers' series comeback. Kaline would lead his team to the playoffs again in 1972, and he collected his 3,000th hit in 1974 before hanging up his spikes at the end of the season. A lifelong Tiger, he is the franchise's all-time leader with 399 home runs and 2,834 games played, and remains among the top 5 in franchise history in virtually every offensive category. Summing up his career, Kaline said, "I was able to be exactly what I wanted to be in my life, a baseball player. I didn't go into it thinking I was going to make the Hall of Fame." But Kaline defied his own expectations when he joined baseball's greatest fraternity. Al Kaline was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1980.
And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a matinee edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza on this Wednesday, April the 8th, 2020. And, of course, fitting tribute to Mr. Tiger for those of us here in the Michigan area. Baseball in general. We lost a legend. We lost probably one of the classiest individuals to put on a baseball uniform. Monday afternoon, Al Kaline passed away at the age of 85. And, again, we thought we would just pay tribute to Mr. Tiger. If he's not on the Mount Rushmore of Detroit athletes, he's got to be right there. If you look in baseball, I guess you could say maybe Ty Cobb, but Al Kaline was Mr. Detroit, Mr. Tiger, not only on the field but off the field. Of course, he was involved with the Tiger organization for 67 years, I believe they said, right up through until this year as a special advisor. And you could tell by the outpouring of tributes to Al Kaline that everybody that met him knew how genuine he was, how classy he was. Never hesitated to shake a person's hand or sign an autograph. And you listen to the younger players that would talk about him, even rookies on the roster for the Tigers this year, one or with a couple of years' experience even, and they all spoke glowingly of Al Kaline. And yeah, he's going to be missed, that's for sure. And Mr. Tiger, one of my first heroes, I guess, watching baseball for the Tigers back in the early 70s, as I brought this story up last night on the show. I can remember playing hooky, watching the Tigers and the Oakland A's in 1972, and I can remember him. And, of course, I remember when he retired in 74. Bummed out. That's who my first jersey number was in Little League, was number 6 after Al Kaline. So, again, rest in peace, Al. Definitely going to be missed here in the Detroit area, Michigan, and also through baseball. Hall of Famer on his first ballot. Never a doubt there. 3,007 hits, as I said, leading with 399 home runs for the Tigers. He definitely was a first-class individual. So, anyways, thanks for joining us on this matinee Wednesday, if you will, here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Going to be here till about 2 o'clock this afternoon. Thought we would take advantage of the nice weather one more time, as it's about 60 degrees out. A little breezy, but I'll tell you, we'll take it, especially after last night. The weather that rolled through this area, just to the east of us, you could see pictures of people's front and backyards. It looked like it snowed out. There was that much hail, about an inch of hail, a half inch of hail on the ground, golf ball size, softball size hail. Oh, and then, of course, there's my producer, Miggy, in the background. He saw something he didn't like, so you might see him wandering through the background here this afternoon, or you might even hear him. So thanks again for joining us. This will probably be the last day that we're outside, as we will have our shows tomorrow will be indoors. It's going to be chilly out here. The temperature is going to fall right off, probably down to about 45 degrees. So we thought we'd take advantage of the sunshine, and we're all secluded with the COVID-19 virus going around. Our lives turned upside down, and of course we're all with the stay-at-home advisories, if you will, probably for a few more weeks. But we're going to get through this. So again, we thought it'd be a nice little diversion to have a few more shows on, and hope you enjoy it during your lunch hour today. And again, throughout the rest of the week, we'll be on at 1 o'clock Eastern time here. So scheduled to join us in about 8 minutes. Marcus Grosnick's going to call. He is. We're going to talk some WrestleMania with him. He had a chance to watch it over the weekend, and it was a great show. We talked at length about it last night too with Matt Gamlin. Just for what the different scenario for those people, just like everybody else. The WWE still putting on shows. I know some people don't like it, but they put on the shows, and they did a pretty good job, I think, for what they were, for the circumstances. So, it'll be interesting to get Marcus's take. He's a regular contributor to our show here. And we've got a poll question up here on my page on Facebook, or my personal page, and also on Twitter at Real Captain Lou. We're talking baseball. 3,000 hits for Al Kaline. That was the standard bearer. That got you into the Hall of Fame pretty much, no questions asked. So we put up there, what is going to be the toughest milestone to reach in baseball? And I put 4 picks up there: 3,000 hits, 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one. 3,000 hits, 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, 600 home runs. And most of the responses, I'm going to keep that up. We're going to leave it up until tomorrow, so we'll talk about it on the show tomorrow as well. And had a great back and forth conversation with Dylan Monette a little while ago. He's been on the show before, and it's funny, is 300 wins seems to be the consensus right now for the toughest milestone to get. And you look at the active wins leader right now is Bartolo Colon. He's 46 years old, and technically he's still active. We'll see if he pitches once baseball resumes, but he's at 246 wins, I believe, or 247. And then next up is Justin Verlander. I thought Justin Verlander had more wins than what he's got. He's got 225 wins. Now, he's got 3,006 strikeouts, so that 300 win plateau, I think, is going to be very, very tough to beat. Verlander he's 75 wins away, and he's 36 years old. So if he pitches 5 more years, he's got to average 15 wins. I think that he's got the best chance to do it, obviously, out of the active players with, with 300 or with anywhere over 200 wins. But I was looking down the list. Zach Greinke's next at 205 wins. He's 35 years old. And you go down at Clayton Kershaw. Gosh, hard to believe he's 31 years old already. He's only got 169 wins. So he's got to get out. We talked about this yesterday a little bit and on Monday as well. A lot of these players, they don't play as long as they used to. They make a lot of money, and I'm not begrudging any of them for the money they make, but the incentive isn't there. And especially with 300 wins, we've talked about this ad nauseum. They have a starting rotation of 5 pitchers now. And in some cases, once you get into July and August, you get that 6th starter. So you don't get as many opportunities to pitch. And so that is where I believe is going to be the biggest stumbling block. You look at guys like Felix Hernandez, 169 wins. He's 33 years old. Max Scherzer, he's 34 years old. You lose track of time. And Max has only got 170 wins, so he's got 130 to go. He's not going to make it. I looked at somebody like maybe Chris Sale. He's only got 109 wins. Cole Hamels is only at 163. So I think that 300-win plateau, to me, is the toughest. Bob Cook chimed in and said 300 or 3,000 hits. And I thought about it for a while. Albert Pujols right now has got 3,200. He's already over the plateau, obviously. He's 39. Miguel Cabrera is the next up. I think he'll do it. The question is, will he do it still in a Detroit uniform? With his contract, more than likely, he is at 28-15 going into this year. So he's got a shot at it. And then Robinson Cano at 2,500. I think he's got an outside shot, but he's 36 years old. So he's got to average, if he plays 4 or 5 years, I think he'll make it. After that, you got a drop-off. Nick Markakis is the 4th all-time or active leader in hits with 2,300. Then you go down to Ian Kinsler. And I looked at some of the ages behind him. Ryan Braun, Joey Votto, Edward Encarnacion, Dustin Pedroia, Hunter Pence, Ryan Zimmerman, they're all 34, 35 years old, and they're under 2,000 hits. So when you think about that, maybe 3,000 hits might be tough to get. Again, I can see Cano and Cabrera doing it. Cano, if he can, their biggest worry is their health. We all know Cabrera's health issues here in Detroit the last 2 or 3 years. He's beat up. He's relegated to being a DH, which will save his career, obviously, but wow, those are some interesting numbers. And I looked at that and I thought Bob might have a good bet on that one too. 3,000 strikeouts, I think, might be a little bit easier to attain. And Dylan and I were talking about this, like I said, kind of corresponding back and forth. In this era of playing, you go for the long ball, and a lot of times, you either hit the long ball or you strike out. So that could aid some of these starting pitchers. But again, it goes back to rotation. You've got 5 or 6, you've got 5 days in between starts. You don't get as many chances to do it. And that could be something to look at. I mean, I kind of think, Mark Simon chimed in, easy question, 300 wins. I can't argue with that. Again, we look at the rotation. Let's go back to that. There's just the age limit, or not the age limit, but the factor. You've got to average 15 wins for 20 years now. And again, the amount of starts, it's not like the 60s and 70s and further back when you had 4-man rotations and maybe in the summertime 5. So yeah, 300 I think is, right now, I would say that's the toughest part. And maybe 3,000 hits after that. 600 home runs, I think that's a little bit easier to attain right now because, again, the old adage, chicks dig the long ball. More guys are going for that. You know, it's a home run. It's a home run attitude right now. Either home runs or strikeouts. But again, with the 3,000 strikeouts, you don't have the you don't have the starts to back it up. Well, let's head out to our guest line right now, and we're pleased to be now joined by Marcus Grosnick. He's a regular contributor to the show, and we're going to call him one of our pro wrestling insiders. But Marcus, before we get into wrestling, I got to give you a chance to answer the question. Our poll of the day: which is the toughest milestone do you think is going to be achieved in baseball? We've got 300 wins, 3,000 hits, 3,000 strikeouts, or 600 home runs.
Oh man. Well, I think as you've seen over the last couple of years, I think the home run part of that is going to probably be the easiest, which is, the technology, how these guys are getting bigger and stronger every year. So I'll take home runs off the bat. I'll take that off the list. I would say probably, was it 2,000 strikeouts?
3,000 strikeouts, 3,000 hits, and 300 wins.
I think 3,000 strikeouts is going to be the toughest one, just because the fact that, these guys are getting better and better every year, and you see everybody getting better. The batting average of the league is going up. Home runs are going up. It's getting easier and easier to be able to hit the ball. So I think for the pitchers, it's going to be tougher to get to 3,000 strikeouts, just for the fact that, times are progressing, technology is getting better, guys are getting stronger, their bat speed's getting faster, they're using analytics to their advantage. So I think they have the advantage over the pitchers. So I think that's why that's going to be the toughest.
Well, I can go along with that, and I think that I would rank that behind maybe 300 wins. Mine is 300 wins, then the strikeouts, then the hits, only because, and my biggest argument too is the way the rotations are now. You've got 5-man, if not sometimes 6-man rotations in the majors, as opposed to back, 20, even 15, 20 years ago when it was a 4-man rotation where you got more starts. So I can't argue with I can't argue with you on the 3,000 strikeouts. I think those are 1 and 2. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's turn our attention to WrestleMania, like we said we were going to talk about. A great weekend of shows. First of all, I asked this last night, and I'm going to ask you. How tough would it had to have been of an adjustment for these guys and gals? You got the grandest stage, their Super Bowl, or even a normal house show. They're used to wrestling in front of thousands of people, and now they're wrestling in front of nobody. The actual performing, and also doing the promos. Talk about how tough of an adjustment that has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a situation that not anybody thought anybody was going to be in. You're going to be at the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay and perform in front of, how many, 50, 60, 70,000 fans in the football stadium. And, you go to the Performance Center and you got no one there except for commentators, cameramen, and talent. And now you have to try to find a way to get yourself psyched up, get yourself into the zone, and go out there and still put on a performance. Because if you think about it, right now, wrestling is the only form of the major quote-unquote sports that is actually still going on right now. So for them, they have to find a way to keep people engaged and going through all the difficulties of having a tag team ladder match with only one member of each tag team because the other ones, they're quarantined, and then you have a guy like Roman Reigns who, because of, his former cancer history, is very susceptible to what's going on. So they had to make a change. You throw Braun Strowman out there, and he wins the title. I think just being able to deal with all the different changes and stuff like that, and I still think they put on one of the better WrestleManias that I've seen, I think, just storytelling-wise, in the last couple of years. Oh,
I agree 100%. I think as far as storytelling goes, it was probably one of the better ones I've seen probably in about 10 years. And it was, we talked about this a little bit last night, and it was very interesting to hear the wrestlers and to hear their trash talking, for lack of a better word, really came into play. Yep. And I think that really enhanced the storytelling. And the matches not only in the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match, but Kevin Owens' match. Charlotte Flair showing how much she is just like her dad. The mannerisms and now the way that story was told in that match, I tell you, that to me was very compelling to watch.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you look at specifically the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match. You don't see WWE doing that kind of stuff.
No.
Doing the pre-taped matches. That was always something like AEW, Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling was doing and had done in the past, and you never saw WWE take that kind of route and do it more like a movie or a short story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they nailed both those matches right on that. The Undertaker match, I was so happy to see him come back as the American Bad A. I mean, just rolling in on the motorcycle with Metallica playing in the background, the bandana on his head. I mean, he was just ready to go. And, AJ Styles is such a great competitor. He's such a great entertainer. He does such a great job to trash talk and really use personal information to tell the story of how personal those two had gotten.
Well, I'll tell you what I like too is, well, first of all, I read where it took 8 hours to film that, and which is phenomenal. That tells you how much time and effort was put into it. I love how you read afterwards that Vince did something that they don't do very often anymore. They let them ad-lib and do their own creative control of the match. You hear now where when those guys do their promos, 95% of them are kind of pre-scripted. And then the job that John Cena did with Bray Wyatt, to me, it really enhanced the talent level of Bray Wyatt. And again, John Cena proved how versatile he is and how he put over Bray Wyatt. And but the storytelling in those, and just I got to tell you, Marcus, at the beginning I thought I wasn't sure how they were going to do that with Bray Wyatt and John Cena. Were they going to put over Bray Wyatt? But at the end, it kept me right until the very end, and that's what they want to do, even with a match like that. And I thought they accomplished it on both ends.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I read too that Triple H was the director in charge of the Boneyard match, so you got that camaraderie between Triple H and The Undertaker that they've had for so many years. And, AJ Styles with the OC there, too, with Gallows and Anderson. And, I think that was just such a great pairing, those two. You had the Dead Man that's big, tall, powerful. AJ is more finesse. He can do more of the high-risk, high-reward moves. I think that was great. For the Firefly Funhouse, I was not expecting there to be a big match. It was more storytelling and really going through like John's early career with Ruthless Aggression, then going through the Thuganomics era, then the You Can't See Me era, then throwing in the NWO, which I thought was really cool.
That was.
Never thought you'd see John Cena in NWO black and white. But I think that match was more about storytelling. And, John being such a part-time guy right now, I think it's time, like The Undertaker said in the past, too, it's time to give back to the industry that gave you so much. And I think you're starting to see John come back for certain things to help put guys over. And I think Undertaker's kind of doing the same thing where, yeah, he won, but I think you could see how much he put Styles over and should give Styles a pretty good run going forward.
Oh, I agree 100%. We're being joined by Marcus Grosnick, one of our pro wrestling insiders, an all-around insider, all things hockey and Chicago area sports here on this matinee Wednesday out in the sunshine here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Marcus, I was really impressed with just about every match. There was a couple that, I could have went either way. I have to be honest, I had to step away from the Aleister Black Bobby Lashley match because I think Bobby Lashley to me he's got to repackage himself. I know there's rumors that he may do a program with Brock Lesnar down the road, but I got to tell you, the women, I thought they showed up in these matches. That Charlotte Flair Rhea Ripley match, I thought the storytelling was phenomenal. I wasn't super surprised that she won. I know it's funny, the odds, she was a 2-1 underdog to win that match. The Sasha Banks match, or the five-way match, I thought was excellent, even with Tamina in there as pretty much an extra. And the tag match, Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And then, of course, the match on Saturday in, gosh, I'm just drawing a blank on it right now.
Live in Italia.
Yeah, that match, but the championship match, for God's sake, Becky Lynch and Shayna Baszler.
Yeah, there you go.
I thought the women really showed up well, and I'm glad that I think they've come a long way, and I think that they've proven that they are on equal footing with the men for the most part.
Yeah, I think, the first match, that kickoff match, that first women's match was Nikki Cross and Alexa against the Kabuki Warriors, and I think it was time to make a change. They really honestly haven't done a whole lot with the women's tag team division.
No.
If you think about it, there's not a lot of women's tag teams, right? It's really Cross and Bliss, the Kabuki Warriors. I guess you could throw like Bayley and Sasha into that mix, but I think it was time for them to give up the titles. I've heard rumors that Kairi Sane is thinking about going back to Japan once her deal is up. She's just really not happy with where things are going creatively, so that might have something to do with it. I personally thought, Lou, I don't know about you, but I thought Baszler was going to finally beat Becky for the title, and I was a little shocked to
was too.
The man come out on top.
I was 100% surprised on that. I could see after watching it and then seeing Monday Night Raw, which to me was kind of a letdown show, but we can talk about that in a little bit. The vignette that they did with Baszler I thought was good. I could see them prolonging this the program between those two. But I got to tell you, I liked how they did the elimination match. You knew that they were all going to gang up on Tamina. Like I said, I think she was a last-minute throw-in. I don't know what direction they're going to go with her. But what I liked about it, and again, they achieved what they set out to do, at least with me, is I didn't know if Sasha was going to turn. Eventually, I think she's going to, but I didn't know how they were going to do that, and I loved how they did it with Lacey Evans getting the pin over her, and then they left me kind of on edge. Was Sasha going to come back in and throw a monkey wrench on Bayley? But I thought that match was very well thought out.
Yeah, I think so too. And for Tamina, you really haven't seen a whole lot of her. I know she's dealt with some injuries. I believe Dana Brooke was supposed to be the fifth member of that match.
That's who it was, yes.
But because of what happened, she obviously had to stay home. So Tamina comes in and kind of fills the spot. But you kind of needed that tougher element. Tamina's just a tough competitor. She's hard hitting. She's Superfly's daughter, and you needed that kind of element in that match when you had more of the technique with Sasha, Bayley. Lacey Evans, I think, is by far one of the best up and rising stars right now in the SmackDown women's division. So I think eventually Sasha's going to beat Bayley for the title, but then I could see Bayley doing a program with Lacey, with hopefully Lacey finally winning the title at some point, because I think she is well overdue for a title run.
Well, it's going to be interesting. What I loved watching the Charlotte Flair match. I was surprised with that outcome. I not 100% surprised, but part of me was surprised with it. Then after the fact, I thought, well, if she's going to be going to NXT, they're going to put the strap on her. But now, Rhea Ripley, I thought she did well for herself in that match. But now you've got the 6-way ladder match, I think, tonight on NXT to see who's going to be the number one contender for Charlotte Flair. Maybe Rhea Ripley goes to SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. So there's going to be some big challengers. If she goes to Raw, you're throwing her in there with Shayna Baszler. But I liked the match. I thought, Flair was vintage Flair. To me, she's still the top women's performer in the company. And now she gets to maybe help put over some more talent in NXT. I don't know, but it's going to get me to watch NXT. It's going to give me more of a reason to.
Yeah, and with Rhea Ripley, I'll let you know, I was reading something on WrestleZone last night, just kind of catching up on things, and it sounds like Rhea Ripley actually had to fly back to Brisbane because her work visa was up.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
she had to renew the work visa. So the speculation is the reason she dropped it at Mania was because they knew she had to fly home, and they weren't sure how long it would take to get her back to Florida.
Okay. Well, that makes sense to me then.
So it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
100%.
I think once she gets back, she'll be right back in the title picture, and I don't think there's any way that they won't give her a main roster spot and really give her a push because, you've seen over the last, how many months that she's had the title since she beat Shayna, that, she's been one of the most popular superstars across all three brands.
Oh, 100%. That's a great point. Marcus Grosnick joining us here on the show this afternoon on this matinee Wednesday of the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Gorgeous day to do a show, about 60 degrees outside, sunshine. We'll take it while we can get it. Let's go back to Sunday where we had the last man standing match. Again, storytelling was great in that match. I loved the ending. I said last night that I thought maybe the match dragged out a little bit too long if I had to have a critique on it. But, boy, I tell you, both wrestlers, you could see why Randy Orton is still considered one of the best workers in the business. And Edge coming back after a long layoff, he looked like that he didn't miss a beat in 9 years, and I thought it was a great match.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for Edge, Orton was the one guy that he had to go up against, right? I really don't think there was anybody right now on the roster that could match Edge's intensity, could do the storytelling with Edge because they have such a history with the Rated RKO tag team. They've been together for a lot of years, and with Orton making it personal, RKOing Beth Phoenix, Edge's wife, you knew that this was going to be a dogfight, and to be able to have it at the Performance Center, I think was a blessing for them because I don't think they could have done this type of match at WrestleMania just because of the scale of the stadium. So I think Edge doing the concerto to Orton on top of that semi-truck to finish it off was kind of, apropos with the reason why Edge was out because Orton did the concerto to him to knock him out. So you could tell that there was some emotion on Edge's face, like he almost didn't want to do it, but he knew he had to win the match and kind of close this chapter. So we'll see what happens with Edge. I'm curious to see if they're going to keep doing something with him part-time like a Cena, or if they're going to try to put him in another program with somebody, because he is 9 years off. He's still got it, and it was awesome to see.
Oh, 100%. I just thought that, again, you never know with some of these wrestlers when they have a layoff like that, how are they going to perform? And I thought, like you said, it was very smart to have him go with Randy Orton just because of the history. But to the point, I think Randy Orton with him and Corbin, they're two of the best workers, and AJ Styles in the business right now. They're probably the three best workers, and maybe Kevin Owens. Speaking of Kevin Owens, that match with Seth Rollins, I got to tell you, it's great that it went to a no disqualification match, because when he got hit by the bell from Seth Rollins and they rang it, I thought, no, you can't do this. And then it ended up being a very, very good match. And I got to give it to Kevin Owens, man, looking a little like Shane McMahon coming off the top of that podium or whatever. It just, boy, they left it all out there. And again, two wrestlers that are two real good performers. Yeah,
and I think too, you can add the aspect of, I'm glad it was a one-on-one competition. You didn't have, Buddy Murphy or Akam and Razor there to kind of throw some interference. I'm really happy that it was a one-on-one fight with those two guys, because those are probably two of the best workers, as you mentioned, in the business right now that can go day in and day out and really tell a good story. And I agree with you, too. It had to be a no DQ because of everything that Seth had put Kevin through over the last couple months. That's the way it needed to be. And for him to jump right off the WrestleMania sign and throw that elbow, like you said, like Shane McMahon, I think that was an awesome aspect to give some big, high-flying moments for the match.
Well, some of the other matches we'll touch on real quick. I'm super thrilled for Sami Zayn to be getting a run with a belt for a while. You know, the guy's battled back from injuries. I think he's great with the microphone. He's great as a bad guy, and I'm happy that he was able to get over on Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan, another good worker, the underdog role, but I'm super thrilled with Sami Zayn winning. Elias against Corbin, that one I thought Corbin was going to actually win. I was a little surprised by that one, but that was a decent match. But I really like what they're doing with Sami Zayn.
Yeah, I think, I was trying to think about this before I came on. When was the last time that Sami Zayn actually had a one-on-one match?
It's been a long time. Yeah.
It probably was against, I'm trying to think, it might have been against Owens, but I'm trying to remember. I mean, it's been years since he was, had a singles match.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a wrestling fan like me and you go back and watch some of those matches with Steen on, Ring of Honor when he was El Generico and when he first came up through NXT, I mean, you could see how good of a worker he is. I mean, the guy just does everything perfectly. He tells the story really, really well, no matter what the situation is. And, I was a little disappointed that they didn't give him a bigger, longer run on the main roster, but I think now having Shinsuke and Cesaro with him and kind of forming that little bit of a stable and him having the belt, hopefully that means we'll see him as the IC champ going forward for at least a little bit longer.
Oh, 100% agree. And Cesaro winning in that kickoff match against Drew Gulak, I don't have a problem with that. I think Drew is an up-and-comer, but Cesaro, there's another one. A worker that you want to talk, we were talking about this last night, the epitome of a tough guy. He's right up there with a hockey player. Gets his teeth knocked through his gums a couple of years ago when he was wrestling with Sheamus, and he still finished the match. There's a guy who's been through a lot, and I'm glad that he was able to come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's another tough guy that kind of like Sami, right? That you saw a lot of promise from the Indies, from Ring of Honor, stuff like that. Comes to WWE. Has a pretty good start, kind of in the middle, doesn't do a lot, and now starting to finally come back to it. Did some really awesome stuff with Sheamus with the Bar. I think he's a really good tag team wrestler, but I would love to see them maybe give him a push to hold, maybe the IC title or, possibly throw him into the mix for a heavyweight championship because I think he is so tough. He could handle that schedule, and he could handle some of the bigger guys like Brock and Bobby. And Baron Corbin in a match and really hold his own.
Well, we got 3 matches real quick. We'll talk about, the 2 championship matches. Braun Strowman and Goldberg, I think everybody knew what was going to happen there. Goldberg is, I think he's, from what I've read and just you could tell by the fan reaction, I think his time has come and gone. I think he's kind of worn out his welcome. And, this Roman Reigns was handpicked to wrestle him, and he would have went over. So Braun Strowman, I don't have a problem with him winning the belt. It's like I told Matt last night, the match of 2 moves, but you knew that was going to happen. There's no way in hell that Goldberg was going to put a jackknife on Strowman if he couldn't do it to Bray Wyatt.
No, and it wasn't going to be a technical match. It was going to be, like you said, it's going to be the power slam by Strowman, and it's going to be the spear by Goldberg, and that's kind of the way it is. And I really don't think you're going to see Goldberg in a ring for a little while.
That could be his last match because I know his contract's up. If they have him in there, it's not going to be for anything significant. I agree with you. And then the SmackDown tag match, the ladder match, that was awesome. And Matt and I went back and forth on this last night. I want to get your opinion. I almost think it was better with the 3 guys. He disagreed with me on it, and they had some good spots on it. I love how the finish went with them all taking the belts off the thing, but then Morrison grabbing them both and falling off the ladder. I just think it might have been a little too clunky with 6 guys in there, but then again, Matt brought up a good point. All of them are good performers. They've all been through this, so I don't know, but I enjoyed it. Your take on that ladder match?
Yeah, I think so. And I think if you look on the 3 tag teams, who are the 3 guys that would put on the best show, right? Morrison, with everything he's done, he's so talented with his parkour. He can do a lot of, interesting things. Kofi's another one that, just the athleticism is out of this world.
Oh, yeah.
They can do a lot of different things than, maybe, obviously Big E and Xavier can. And for the Usos, whether it was Jimmy or Jay, I think those two guys are both really talented. So I think if you were in a bigger stadium, it wouldn't have felt as clunky if you had the 6 guys, but because you had the Performance Center, a lot tighter spaces, you really couldn't do a whole lot of big moves in spots. I think it was good that they just had those 3 guys, and I think those were the 3 that were the ones that should have been there.
Yeah, and it was a very good match. And then finally, the last match of the weekend, Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. I thought it was a good match. Again, not very many moves, but you didn't expect it, so it wasn't like you were. Yeah. I kind of wish it might have went a little bit longer, but the outcome, I think, is what everybody wanted. Drew McIntyre, it's his time. The storytelling was good leading up to the match, I thought. And then, of course, last night they had Monday, they teased on Raw what happened after WrestleMania went off the air. I'm thinking to myself, why the Big Show? But, again, he put him over. But overall, I thought the match went about as expected with Drew McIntyre. I feel bad that he's not able to hoist the belt for the first time in front of 75,000 people, but that's the business right now, and I thought overall it was a decent match.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it was about time. Think about where Drew had been, right? Mm-hmm. He was Vince McMahon's chosen guy, right?
Yeah, I remember.
He was touted as, he was the next big thing, right? No pun intended for Brock, but
right.
He kind of settled out. He was in 3MB, just kind of doing the goofy stuff. And then he left, and he really reinvented himself on the indies.
Sure
and really did a good job of building himself up physically, being able to be better on the mic, be better at storytelling. And when he came back, man, you just knew by his look and the way he carried himself that eventually this was going to happen. And I don't really think you could see anybody else but Drew beating Brock for the title because, Drew's really earned it. And he's done a great job of connecting with the fans over the last, since Royal Rumble, which was a couple months ago.
Well, real quick, while I got you on for a few more minutes, now WrestleMania is over. Obviously, the number one question is how much longer are they going to be able to do this at the Performance Center? The speculation, obviously their next pay-per-view is Money in the Bank coming up in May. They advertised it. I don't see it happening where it's in Pennsylvania, I believe. It's supposed to be. If they have it, it's probably going to be in the Performance Center. You've got wrestlers that, have left. They got to come back. It's, I know that I think they taped SmackDown already for Friday night, but are they going to be able to go on like this for much longer? I mean, it's again, more difficult. You can start doing different storylines, but, you've got somebody like Brock Lesnar. He went back to Canada. You talked about Rhea Ripley having to go back overseas. It's just like every other sport right now, I guess, Marcus. It's, it's up in the air. Raw, I thought, was a disappointment, but what can you do? I mean, you don't, that's more crowd-driven, I think, than anything else, the one after WrestleMania. So, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see a pro wrestling hiatus for a month or so?
That's been the speculation, right? I've read a couple times that Vince has thought about possibly, shutting things down for a month and just kind of getting everybody healthy and back to square one and, just kind of hitting the reset button, right? When was the last time you heard WWE taking days off, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
So this might be the perfect time for them to just kind of hit the reset button, get themselves back in order, and then kind of go from there. But on the other hand, I could also see Vince being very stubborn and be like, hell no, we gotta keep going. We're the only entertainment company that's still working. We're still doing stuff for our fans. If we have to rewrite storylines, then we have to rewrite storylines, but we're going to have Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and 205 Live every week because right now the people need something to watch, and by God, we're going to give it to them. So I could see it going either way.
Yeah.
Likely, my inkling is that they're going to keep going. I don't see them shutting down, and I can see them having money in the bank at the PC come May if things aren't squared away.
Oh, no doubt about it. There is no way. As to quote Vince McMahon's theme song, there's no chance in hell that pay-per-view is going to be in Pittsburgh, because they're not going to be ready for it, and you're not going to get 15,000 fans in a stadium right now for anything. I think that's fool's gold, going back to the plans they're trying to make, not to change the sport real quick, but with baseball, talking about opening up in Arizona in May. I don't see it. It's great thinking, but I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the upcoming pay-per-views, right, you have Money in the Bank in May, and then you don't have anything until July, which would be Extreme Rules. So,
right.
And then SummerSlam is in August. So I don't think you're going to see it as WWE pay-per-view in a stadium, I don't think personally, until at least SummerSlam, or possibly after that. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. Great. Hopefully, knock on wood, things start to move in the right direction with everything that's going on. You start to clean things out, and hopefully, we can get back to some normalcy and get some pay-per-views back in those big arenas.
100%. Well, Marcus, hey, thanks for taking time out of your schedule this afternoon. It's always great talking to you. Thanks for being part of this sunshiny matinee day here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Keep up the great work, and look forward to talking to you soon, and maybe we could talk about events with crowds behind us.
Sounds good, Lou. I can't wait, and pleasure to be on the show as always.
All right, thank you. Marcus Grosnick, one of our insiders, hockey, pro wrestling, baseball, football, you name it. He's from the Chicago area, where the weather, I think, is not too bad over there as well. So there you have it, our 2 days of wrestling wrap-up, two fantastic wrestling insiders that we have the privilege to have on. Marcus Grosnick, and of course my old tag team partner as well, Matt Gamlin, who they're students of the sport. They watch it, they research it. And it's funny is, they're a little bit younger, especially my son. But I'll tell you, he's a student of that. He's a historian. He reads up on it. He tells me things that I forget. And I've been watching pro wrestling since 1971, so there you go. Hey, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about baseball. It's kind of been our theme this week. Unfortunately, with the passing of Al Kaline on Monday afternoon, and we talked with Paul Shivari on Monday about the top 5 pitchers, and then unfortunately the passing of one of his idols, Ed Farmer, the voice of the White Sox. But when we come back, we're going to talk more about our poll question that we have up on Facebook and Twitter. You're listening and watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
Drinkade, ready for distribution worldwide.
Esports are here to stay. Go to jazzsports.ag, log into your account, and look for our new esports section on the top of your screen. Browse through all the different available matches and watch them live with our exclusive esports betting platform. Get instant access to game results, pending and graded bet reports, outright bet types, and upcoming match schedules, all at the easy reach of your fingertips. Jazz Sports puts you in the game.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Again, thanks to Marcus Grosnick for coming on the show, talking a little WrestleMania 36, as he mentioned. Really the only sports and entertainment program that is live going on right now. And we'll see how long that situation lasts. But they had a great show for WrestleMania this past weekend, their Super Bowl, if you will. And again, they did very well with what they had to work with as far as working with no fans in the stands. And the vignettes they did, the Firefly Funhouse match and the Boneyard match were to me, the top two matches, as we talked earlier. And so, again, Marcus, thank you for joining us here this afternoon. Hey, our poll question out as we get back to talking baseball here with the latter part of the show. We're going to leave this up until tomorrow, and we'll have some guests on tomorrow, and we'll talk baseball again as we're probably going to go indoors. It's beautiful outside. Right now, I think it's like 65 degrees, but that old front's coming through, and the temperature's going to drop about 25 degrees and be windy, and there's a slight chance of rain. So we're going to head back into our studio tomorrow. But our question is, which milestone in baseball is now going to be the toughest to achieve? We've got 300 wins, 3,000 hits, 3,000 strikeouts, and 600 home runs. And we had some more input on our Facebook page, which, again, we thank you. Just check us out, my personal Facebook page, Lewis Gamlin, or the show Facebook page, which is the Captain Lou Extravaganza. And John Peterson, one of my partners in crime doing the ACHA National Tournament in hockey, chimed in, and he says 300 wins will not happen. And he has a sidebar that 3,000 hits probably won't either with everything that goes around. And I tend to agree with them. Brett Luthner, another one of my cohorts doing ACHA National Tournament in hockey, he says Mike Trout may be the last one to get to 3,000 hits, and he could very well be right. I think Miguel Cabrera is going to get there, and Mike Trout, I think, is a pretty good bet on that as well. As I look at some of the other players you've got. I think Robinson Cano has an outside shot if he can stay healthy. He's at 2570. But you go down the list after that, maybe Jose Altuve. He's at 1568, and he's only 29 years old. He could be the next one along with Trout. But you look at the rest of this list of the top 25, and they're all in their low to mid-30s, if not older, and they're all under 2,000 hits. And, with injury and whatnot, so you figure just to be on the safe side, 150 hits a year, you're looking at, 8 to 10 years. And with these guys in their mid-30s, I don't see that happening. Joey Votto, do you really think that he's got 1,200 hits left in him? Hunter Pence, already 36 years old. I don't see it. Matt Kemp, 34 years old. Elvis Andrus, he's 30. Do you think he's going to get another 1,300 hits? I don't see that either. So that's a great point. But I'm sticking with 300 wins myself, as I mentioned. With Bartolo Colon leading the way at 247. Justin Verlander at 225, I think, might have the best opportunity to do it. I could see him pitching for 6 more years and averaging, 12 to 15 wins. That's what he's going to have to do. After that, Zach Greinke, he needs 95 wins, and he's 35 years old. I don't see that happening either. I look down the list, as we mentioned. Cole Hamels, guy's 35 years old already, and he's only got 163 victories. I don't, and I could be wrong. You could get somebody, a fluke like Bartolo Colon, will pitch until they're 45 or 46. I just don't see it. I think the easiest one out of the choices that I had is going to be the 600 home runs. Because, like you said, with analytics and whatnot, and everybody's geared towards the home run now, and they swing for the fences more than they ever did. That's why I could see possibly 3,000 strikeouts. But the problem with that, too, as we mentioned in the beginning of the show, is you've got 5 or 6, you got 5-man rotations now, so you get one less start. And once you get into July and August in a normal year, you get 6 starters. So you might start once a week, and that's it. That's crazy. Dave Kurtz chimes in, 300 wins. Yeah. Again, that's my number one obstacle, or the toughest one that is going to be attained is 300 wins. I just don't see it happening, and the contracts might play a part in it. Now these pitchers are making 30, the good ones making $30 million a year. They don't have to pitch. They don't have to play like the old timers had to, because the money just wasn't like it is now. So that might play something into it. Hard to say, but that's why I say 300 wins is going to be the toughest. But we'll keep this up here, and we'll talk about that again tomorrow as well. It was funny again, Dylan Monette brought up another one, and he said, here's one for you. He said, what about stolen bases? Is anybody ever going to break that record? And I looked it up. The active stolen base leader right now is Rajai Davis with 415. He's 1,000 behind Ricky Henderson. And Ricky Henderson is the only one over 1,000 career stolen bases. Second place was Lou Brock at 936. Now I can, again, I'm aging myself back to the 70s and the 80s when I watched baseball or grew up watching it in the 70s. We had Ron LaFleur. He had 90-some stolen bases. Tim Raines, I believe, was the one. Somebody else from the Expos, the name escapes me. But stolen bases, that was part of the MO. Now they don't want you to do it because they're afraid you're going to get hurt. But you got Rajai Davis at 415 stolen bases, and then D. Gordon at 330. Ricky Henderson, he was on base. He was a threat to steal them all. Second, third, and home. Ron LaFleur was the same way. Oh, my goodness. There was another one, too, and I'm just drawing a blank. I could look at all-time stolen bases, but I don't know if I can bring that up real quick. Here, let's look at career while we're at it. Career stolen base leaders, and then it'll come to me. Ty Cobb, 897 way back in the Vince Coleman. That was the one that I wanted to bring up. But, yes, I was right with Tim Raines. He played 23 years and had 800 stolen bases. Vince Coleman, 750. Remember when Vince Coleman got caught in that tarp roller when he was jogging around in the pregame? Man, remember that? I don't know why it just came up to me, but you'll never see another person steal more than 500 bases unless they change the way the game is played, and I don't see it. I mean, there's we've had this discussion many times about baseball where they want to outlaw the shift, which to me is asinine. If they do that, then I will have a problem with it. Or if you want to outlaw the shift, or if you want to make it so the shift isn't working, learn how to hit to the opposite field. That's such a lost art, and I know it's not flashy and it doesn't give you instant results, but if you learn how to hit the other way, who's good at that is Miguel Cabrera. And so don't give me the shift needs to go crap either. I mean, I don't even want to think about that. But baseball has changed, and you won't see, a guy like Ricky Henderson ever again. Not in our lifetime, unless they really radically change something, because baseball just isn't played that way. So yeah, we're going to keep that poll up. What would you say is the toughest milestone in baseball that is ever going to be achieved? Which one do you think will not be achieved? 300 hits, or 300 wins, I'm sorry, 3,000 hits, 600 home runs, or 3,000 strikeouts. Obviously you've got the 56-game hitting streak. I don't think that'll ever be touched. Is somebody ever going to get to Babe Ruth's record? I beg your pardon, Hank Aaron's record of 755? I know Barry Bonds has got the record right now, but I'm sorry. I'm just not going to call him the home run king. I mean, you can debate it with me, give me a reason why. It's just like what I saw. They're doing the top 100 ball players of all time, and they've got Barry Bonds at number 3. Yeah, I mean, he's one that did not have to do the roids. He was already a 3-time MVP with Pittsburgh before he went to San Francisco. That's a whole different argument. We can have that argument on the show if you want. But anyways, those are some records I think that will never be broken if you want to talk about records. But I'm just talking about the standard bearing. To get in the Hall of Fame, it used to be 400 home runs back in the early 70s now, and then it went up to 500. Now 500 home runs isn't that big of a deal. 600 is kind of like the Mendoza line, for lack of a better word, or the standard to get into the Hall of Fame. So I don't know. That's something that we can discuss again at any time you want. So, hey, and it's hard to want to quit, but we have to here pretty quick with this beautiful weather that we see outside here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, your lunch hours or whatever, spending your early afternoon with us here, or your late morning if you're out on the West Coast. Thanks a lot for joining us here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. It's been an absolute blast. We will be on tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to be doing these matinee shows at least through the end of this week, and we'll play it by ear as far as next week goes, what the days we may be able to do it. We'll try to line up some more guests for the rest of the week. Thanks to Marcus Grosnick for giving us his expertise on WrestleMania 36. These are the things we like to chat about, as we mentioned. And again, I hope it's a diversion for you. We could touch, I guess, a little bit on, we'll go over a couple more minutes. We touched briefly on baseball. It came across after our show Monday about the possibility. Jeff Passan talked about how baseball's program, they're thinking about going to May 1st to start things back up. It was leaked to them, and we talked about it a little bit last night, and I went through the math. Okay, let's say that they want to try to do this. They want to maybe play all the games in Arizona. It's a great idea. On the surface, yeah, I think it could happen, but even if it's in front of no fans, my thinking is, number one, where are they going to get all the tests for all the players? Are they going to sign off on it? Are they going to want to be away from their families for 4.5 months? And I don't see that happening. And is it wishful thinking? Yeah, I think it is wishful thinking. Are you going to want to play doubleheaders in Arizona on a Thursday afternoon in July when it's 110 degrees out? Are you going to want to play when it's 90 degrees out at 8 o'clock at night? Those are some of the reasons why I don't think it'll happen. I'd love it to happen. I want sports. I want some sorts of normalcy, obviously. But I'm also being realistic. I'm not going to get on here and bang somebody for not, for being optimistic. I think baseball, what they did, I think they had a purpose in leaking that out to ESPN. I think that they wanted to test the waters and get the public reaction to it. Just like the NHL and the NBA are kind of doing that with, talking about going to sites in Florida, in Vegas for the NBA, or North Dakota or Saskatoon for NHL. There's so many hoops that you got to get through just to get everybody there in such a short window. Where are they going to come up with 5,000 tests for baseball? What do they do at the minor leagues? I just don't see it. My realistic goal for Major League Baseball, I'm sticking with it. Like I said last night, I'm sticking with it until it changes. And that's 4th of July. And I think you're going to see summertime for basketball and hockey, if they're able to play. And I hope they are. But there's so many hoops. This virus right now is still, the numbers are getting bigger and bigger every day. And I know the curve is going to flatten. I get it. But I still think it's weeks away yet. And so I don't see how you could realistically get the ball players to, number one, to agree to go there in May when there's a risk factor. Because this isn't just hitting the older folks, it's hitting some younger folks too. That's why the social distancing, I think it's working, but we have to keep it up. And it goes in line with what Mike Gundy said yesterday or the other day about his target date of May 1st. He wants the younger kids in there to start working, and the workers. That's all fine and dandy. But you really think parents are going to want their kids going back to campus? And here's my other thing while we wrap it up here today when you talk about that. And we'll expound on that tomorrow as well, is, okay, these schools are closed. If a campus was not good enough for the students to be there, why all of a sudden is it good enough for the athletes? And I understand that it's great for the American psyche, it's a diversion and all that. Right now, leave the diversion for us to talk about it. We can relive lists. We can talk about, the number one teams that coulda, woulda, shoulda. Right now, let's just get this virus under control. And then we can talk about it. And, it's like Matt and I talked about last night a little bit with wrestling. And I was going to bring up with Marcus, and I forgot. We talked about this on the show already. Let's say they open up. How long before the fans are going to want to go? I got to tell you, I'd be hesitant to go to even if we got the green light. I'll be very surprised if you get 80,000 people or 90,000 at a Michigan game or 70,000 at an MSU game or 100,000 at the Horseshoe or at Tennessee or Alabama or wherever, or 50,000 for an NFL game or 35,000 for a Yankees game when they're in the pennant race if they start back up. We're going to be slowly but surely going into this because there's going to be caution. And so that's another thing I think. Sports is not the be-all, end-all. And I think, like I said, I don't begrudge them for saying it, but I just don't see it happening. I think we're still a couple of months away from any kind of sporting event even starting back up. And I think it's going to be June, at least. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think that's what it's going to be. We'll talk more about that again as we wrap it up here this afternoon. Again, thank you to Marcus Grosnick for joining us here. Thank you for, again, letting us be a part of your afternoon or late morning. It's always a blast. It's a diversion for me, and I hope that I was able to take your mind off of what's going on out there in the real world for a few minutes at least. And again, real quick, our poll question, we will talk about it tomorrow. We'll wrap it up. What is going to be the toughest milestone now to achieve in Major League Baseball? 300 wins, 3,000 strikeouts, 3,000 hits, or 600 home runs? Well, that's going to do it. Hey, this reminder, everybody, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving as always, keep your minds open. Good afternoon, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Thanks for joining us. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, by the way, too.